Hey everyone, just before we jump into the episode, if you're listening to this and struggling to build pipeline through outbound prospecting, go and grab yourself a free access to my new prospecting course. It's got lessons on cold calling. It has the script that my last team used to go from 6 meetings a month to 60 meetings per month. I break the exact script down and I give you one of my AI tools so that you can build your own version of it. I have a lesson on outbound email, how to actually write that very first outbound email, teaching you the key components, and I give you examples of what good looks like. There's lessons in there on how to use video and voice note prospecting to cut through the noise and grab your buyer's attention. And then there's a whole load of other resources in there and lessons and tools. So if you're struggling to build pipeline, go and grab that now. There'll be a link in the video description. Anyway, let's jump into the episode. Welcome back to the Hit Your Numbers podcast. Today we're going to be speaking about the future, I guess the present, Frank, in AI, right? So a lot of people keep saying, oh, AI is the future. I'm like, dude, I think it's already here. Jump on the train. The train's left the station. Super excited. Thanks for agreeing to have this conversation, Frank.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, we do a lot of AI stuff, and I think it's been long coming. The old AI stuff actually is called machine learning. So AI, exists for a while. It's just the new type of AI, the Gen AI, right, that we're all exposed to. It's here now. It works pretty well across text, voice actually as well. We use a lot of voice as well in telling the business. And I think the next frontier, which really kicked in, is actually a couple months ago, is video. So we also can actually see folks using AI, where I could literally take your LinkedIn headshot, and I can make you do and say things on the camera. And yeah, it's crazy. Essentially, that's called deepfake, right? But it's crazy what you can do with AI today. I'm personally super excited. I've been in the AI space for a long time, and yeah, I'm super excited to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, cool. Let's get into it. So maybe just before we jump into the conversation today, just give the listeners a bit of context, a bit about your background, some of the business that you're building, the problems that you're setting out to
Yeah,
solve, because I think that will help us kind of frame the next conversation. So I'll hand the
yeah.
mic over to you.
So I've been in software sales for well over a decade. Started my initial career at Google, and then I worked for a bunch of proper software companies. SimilarWeb, BlackRow, Intent, and always was sort of a top sales rep, always hitting quota and stuff like that. But then in my last gig, I decided to become a VP sales with a sales team of 50. So quite a large team. And back in those days, it was growth at all costs, which is why I had such a huge, humongous team. But that's where I had this sort of epiphany moment around the fact that why there are so many people in sales. Why can't you achieve the same sort of output levels or even higher with significantly fewer humans? And that's because the software wasn't really orchestrated in a particular way. All the softwares out there were charging per seat, so they would expect to get paid more when as your team headcount increases. And I was like, damn, that's not the right way to look at things, right? We live in capitalism, so why do you need all these people? Why can't you just have systems that run sort of autonomously or with a lot of automation? And right now I'm building a company called Salesforce, but that's what we're known for, or just the Forge. We have essentially a lot of brands, but essentially we're building a sort of a software stack. So there's multiple pieces of software. Think of it like Apple. Essentially, we have multiple sort of products that you can nicely put together. And our main goal is to help companies build more sales pipeline, essentially more meetings, but with the least possible headcount. So that's super important. So we are really looking at the financial metric, typically the CAC, so cost of customer acquisition. How expensive is it actually for you to acquire new customers? So we're trying to reduce that as much as we can. And we assume by default, or try to assume by default, that the sales rep doesn't exist necessarily in the sales process equation. So we do a lot of stuff on the AI front, automation front, etc. But we definitely are not here to replace humans by all means. We're big believers that the whole economy, doesn't matter whether it's in sales or finance, etc., but we will be forced to essentially work with AI agents. So we need to get used to this new world, and we're already here today, right? A lot of companies do use AI. Not many, to be honest. I would say probably like less than 5%. So it's actually very rare to see companies that are very good at using AI agents. But if they do that, we see that they make more revenue, they're far more profitable, they raise less VC money or no VC money. They're essentially bootstrapped. So things are definitely massively shifting. But VCs are also kind of hooked on these companies actually also quite a bit. So yeah, so always been in sales, sales leadership, and now building a software company. We've been around for about 2.5 years or so. In the first year, we scaled from $0 to $3 million. First $1 million was without no employees whatsoever. So a lot of automation, a lot of process. Second million in the ARR, we just decided to hire a few engineers and support people. So essentially, no people in go to market up
Okay.
until 2 million in ARR. And then we started to hire from there on because essentially from about 2 million, I think like from 2 million onwards, you really need to start building a team. Otherwise, I'm just in demos all day long, 20 demos or something back then. So yeah, not very sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. Plenty of energy drinks, right? Lots of
Yes.
coffee. Yeah, yeah, totally get it. Okay, and yeah, something you mentioned there is critical, right? A lot of people are still talking about path to profitability. How can
Yes.
we build super efficient go-to-market organizations? It can still hit a big number, but we don't have to spend loads of money on headcount. And also, like you, I did some sales leadership roles, and sometimes it can be quite frustrating having to manage a lot of people, especially salespeople. Most of them are prima donnas. They've got attitudes and things like that, and you have that whole management piece, and sometimes that can get in the way, and people management, especially when they're not right for the organization, just takes you away from the focus, which is growing a really profitable business.
I literally did that today, by the way, with one of my reps. So it's literally today. So there is that definitely that human sort of overhead. So, and I can tell you that I speak to a lot of sort of founders and CEOs, whatever CFOs, and they really are excited about the future where teams are leaner and meaner because they really the whole people management is just a topic. So if somebody's been managing a lot of people, you know what I'm talking about, especially in sales. That yeah, there's a lot of management that happens, a lot of people, and you always think, why couldn't you not have this, smaller, mightier team? You don't need all these people,
Yeah.
because more people means more, you have to buy more licenses with software. Like it just becomes very bloated, very expensive, and inevitably you will be ending up doing layoffs and stuff like that, right? So yeah, so there's definitely a better way of doing things, and I think with all the tech on the LLM front, automation front, so with tools like NA10, and there's a lot of tools that have also popped up because it's much easier to build software. Suddenly, it feels like you can achieve far higher output levels with fewer humans, right? So and so we're seeing a lot of crazy stuff behind the scenes. Even we're seeing what we're building, what competitors are building, and what the whole market is building. That makes me super excited from multiple aspects. I know that what so back in the days, I used to have a sales team of 50, right? Like I mentioned. But today, with 5 sales reps, I'm achieving higher output levels than back then with 50. Just to give you an idea. And we generate over 500 demos on a monthly basis. And
Wow.
yes, a lot of our kind of process of workflow is very sort of agentic or automated. And we do use actually our own product, right? So we dog food, so we generate pipeline that way, but we also use other sort of softwares or systems that we don't offer, but like we plug them in where say I have a problem in the sales team, right? So or in my sales process. Typically the way I look at it at that problem that I want to solve, is there an agent in the market that has been built and actually works? Because some of them don't work, right? So there's a lot of kind of debate on LinkedIn in particular that this doesn't work or that works. So and that's because people have experienced both sides of the coin. So sometimes the agents work, sometimes they don't work, and for some companies they do work, for some they don't. When I have a problem, the first thing I'm thinking of, is there an off-the-shelf an AI agent solution that I could buy instead of essentially hiring humans, right? Or hiring essentially the first solution is an off-the-shelf AI agent. If that does not exist, my second thought process is like, can I build this sort of agent customly somehow myself? Or I have a guy essentially that does this, but not me. But in NA10, right? So like essentially, you need to also think about it that your business today should have this sort of automation backbone. So essentially a platform with a bunch of workflows that's running. It could be N8N, could be Zapier, could be Make.com, or some other platform, right? But essentially your business, anything that's repetitive, you're kind of killing it bit by bit. So can I actually build it in there? So that's option 2. Option 3 is if I have a problem, I will hire an agency or a freelancer. And the reason why that's super important is because hiring people means you need to ramp them, right? You need to retain them. You need to really manage them. And time is money, right? Especially in our business, we're growing very fast. We rather plug in very, people that know what they're doing, the very senior, whatever, you plug them in quite fast, they deliver value or not, doesn't matter, but you essentially can test it out things. And if it works, you keep them, right? So keep them as an agency or a freelancer. And then the last resort is actually to hire an individual into my business. That's literally the last resort. And there's a few other kind of reasons why we do that. Is because in the first year we also scaled sort of from 0 to 40 employees, so very, very fast. But a fun fact is that we have 3 co-founders in the business and 40 employees and no management layer essentially.
Okay.
um, and that's because we hire what we call, the type of individuals that we're hiring is essentially autonomous humans. Humans essentially that don't need to be babysitted. They're adults, right? So we give them a lot of autonomy, we give them targets and everything, right? So they're very smart people. And that just means, we don't need that management overhead, which is very expensive. If you calculate essentially where's your cost base, you rather hire, smarter people or whatever, more senior people that have a lot of common sense, which is not very common.
Yeah.
A lot of common sense, right? That you hire them into your business, you retain them, you grow them, etc. And that's much, much, and you build essentially a process or a system where these autonomous humans, they can talk to each other and they can work as a team, etc. Right? So process is very important there. But it doesn't rely on some sort of manager, right? For them to babysit or pass on the buck or responsibility, on accountability. No, everybody's accountable. So we're driving essentially the business bottoms up, and I'm just the coordinator on the go-to-market front, and my 2 co-founders do the product engineering. So yeah, that's how I think about kind of the world today, and I
Yeah.
highly recommend to think it this way. You have a problem, off-the-shelf solution agent, then you can't do that. Build a custom agent. Option 3 is a freelancer or an agency, and then the last resort is actually hiring somebody into your business.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, and just because the way that we did stuff 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago worked doesn't mean we always have to do it the same way, right? Let's just get curious. Like, let's just think about the problem differently. Let's actually take a step back and think, hey, we have this problem. I want to solve it. I don't actually have to hire somebody straight out of the gates. Why don't I experiment with something else? Go fail fast. And if that doesn't work, have, like you said there, a process. Okay, cool. What's next? Okay, that didn't work. What's next? Okay, that didn't work. Well, maybe in this case, I do need to hire somebody. But let me actually validate that through those other steps first, because it will save me a lot of time, effort, and money, and also pain in all of
Yeah.
that.
One
Right?
of the things I would highly recommend, because for some people this is hard to kind of start with, as a topic. I highly recommend to look at ChatGPT as a sort of business coach. It's very, very powerful. If you look at ChatGPT as a coach, essentially just talk to it and say, "This is my problem. This is what I'm looking to do," and then ChatGPT will try and come up with the best path forward for you to start with. If you want to build an agent or whatever, what are the best agents and so on and so forth. So I think what I've found very powerful, when people have to just go through this sort of mindset sort of transformation, how to run your business more differently, essentially, just speak to ChatGPT. And the reason why ChatGPT maybe not, why not another human, is because most of the folks have never used an AI agent, so they can't really give you good advice most of the times. So that is the dilemma, right? It's hard to look at other businesses and kind of learn from them. There's not that many businesses that actually have gone through this transformation. Sure, you can read some companies on the internet, etc., but it's not
Yeah.
like they're gonna dump their intel, the know-how, how do they do things internally, what makes them so powerful, and so on and so forth. But guess what? ChatGPT has a ton of knowledge and can kind of guide you with initial steps on how to start with that sort of transformation, how to embed agents, what's the fastest way to see value from an agentic system. What you will find typically is you will need to hire a person to implement maybe some of these agents. So there's a bit of an upfront cost. But so I'll give you an example. So let's say we hired a person, I call him the NA10 guy. Essentially, NA10 guy means a guy that knows how to build stuff in NA10. And you kind of have to be sort of technical. You could be an engineer. That guy was an engineer, so he built a lot of work, a lot of automation workflows in a low code and no code tool, right? It's called N8N. Horrible brand, I think, but because I always have a hard time to pronounce them.
Pronounce it. Yeah. Yeah.
And and so you start with, let's say, the best way how we thought about approaching it is like, let's just do about maybe 10 workflows a week, right? So just do in batches. And the thing is, like, if you do 10 workflows a week, suddenly by week 2, you have 20 workflows, and then you have 30, and so on and so forth. So I have right now 300 plus workflows in 910, a lot of workflows. And you will start feeling that your business is more and more autonomous. It's not just sales or whatever, but you start feeling that there's a lot of things that are being done autonomously in the business. And you will start feeling. So I had this feeling back in my days when I used to work at Google. At Google, everything's like automated. So essentially, a smaller business can be as efficient today as a big business like Google.
Yeah.
Um, Arguably, actually more efficient because companies like Google, they have a lot of red tape these days, so they don't
Yes.
move actually as fast as startups. So you could even argue that small startups are even more efficient than the big guys with a lot of resources and a lot of money. So yeah, and I think one example I'm just going to give here. What is example where we have implemented an agentic sort of system, one agent that's not our own agent or some other agents that you can just buy off the shelf, is actually an agent where, let's say you're going to sign up on our website today and you're going to start a trial, and you had no interaction with our support team, neither you booked on a demo or anything like that. Then what happens is either after 7 days or after 14 days, and a voice agent will call you up. So the way that we assembled that agent, we used just an agentic sort of API, voice API, and we gave it a lot of context about our business and what we do in our products.
Yep.
Then we have given it access to HubSpot and Slack and everything, essentially trying to, and even email accounts of our reps, and trying to understand whether there was any ever conversations with the prospect. So the agent is able to make up their mind if the agent should actually call up that prospect or not. And essentially, if there's no conversation and between us and them, then the agent will give a call to the lead after 7 or 14 days, and we'll just ask, "Hey, I just saw that you signed up a week ago." So we also actually did also voice cloning. So I clone my own voice. So the agent says, "Hey, this is Frank from the Forge. How's it going? I saw that you signed up like a week ago. How was your experience?" So essentially, we're trying to farm intel. What happened? Why didn't you buy? What did you think about the product, and so on and so forth. And then, if possible, we're gonna try and book them actually into a call,
Okay.
so into a proper demo. And that's what the agent does, right? So in specific workflow, and there's just one workflow, it's very sophisticated, but still one workflow where it connects to all the systems, has the context about our products, how we compare to competitors, pricing, like a lot of context. And it sounds really good. So if and for every outcome of the call, I just get a ping in Slack, which just notifies me what happened in that call, like a quick summary. Did we end up, booking a demo or not? And then also the cost. How much did it cost me to have that call? Now, guess, James, how much would a call like this cost you? Let's say 30 seconds to 60 seconds.
Oh, no idea.
Less than $1.
Wow.
So now imagine you build this automation less than $1 for a call that actually happens 30 to 60 seconds. Conversation can be fully automated. And now imagine if you had to let the sales rep do that, right? So definitely a lot more expensive, right? And they will have to do the same repetitive task calling, and you're not sure whether they're going to call the whole list or not, and whether they're going to qualify, whether they're going to check the CRM or the email accounts, whatever. In our business, so we're all about blending the agentic systems with humans. So we're trying to think at which point of the sales funnel does it actually make sense to apply a human or an AI agent. So in this example, the AI agent makes sense because the AI agent would just do the same thing all over again. And there's like a streamlined path on the inbound, right? So they sign up, they don't buy. Let's, try and call them up, see what happened, why did, and then get a lot of intel, potentially book them on a call, etc. Right? So that makes sense. This is where you would say, no, applying humans doesn't make sense. So you can kind of make up your mind. But then there's other examples where applying humans makes a lot more sense than agents. So here's another example, same calling kind of stuff. So if you're going to go to our website today and you're going to go to some high intent page like pricing, integrations, or whatever else, and you'll see on the bottom right, there will be an ability to actually call somebody in our end. So the way that it works, that widget is, you'll see you can literally click the call button, and then it will connect to one of our reps in Slack, and then we can just pick up the phone. So we can have literally a live call, like on the Google Meets, like right now. If you want me to show you a demo, like literally on the spot, we can do that. And this is where it makes sense to have humans rather than agents. And
Yeah.
the reason for that is because intrinsically humans, let's say at the bottom of the funnel, so that's when you're showing a demo, when you're actually having a conversation, they really want to talk to another human. It would be very odd if I would put an agent there. So like in this case, it wouldn't make sense to have an agent, right? So this is how we think about different parts of the funnel, whether that's inbound and outbound. When do we use agents and when we don't use agents? So that's kind of from a kind of decisioning standpoint, how we would approach that. But then you also have to think about the regulatory constraints that you may have when it comes to using any agents. So, for example, it is totally fine to use agents sort of for anything that has to do sort of with emails or anything that you do on social. Could be computing messages, sending messages, etc. But when it comes to actually the calling part, you're only legally allowed to do calling on the inbound front, meaning you need to have an opt-in, so a
Yeah.
consent from the user before you can call with the agentic system. Otherwise, it is illegal to call in Europe and the US to do proper cold calling. Because imagine if somebody would cold call you nonstop. I mean, there's kind of a lot of different reasons why agentic
Yeah.
cold call can be a thing. Um, so there's definitely some legal constraints. So I would typically say no on agents, no on cold calling front, and no on social sort of selling topic. Essentially, anything that's on LinkedIn content. I haven't seen agents doing ever a good job there. But yeah, the best thing that comes to content and kind of AI and LLMs, you can definitely build a nice context in ChatGPT and build really nice posts. I've seen that. But yeah, this is where also from a sort of where would you use it and which channels would you use it, where you wouldn't use it, and how I would make a decision, humans versus the agents, I guess, in different parts of the funnel. So yeah.
Yeah, spot on. And I think the context is important. You mentioned context there. For the last probably 12 months, I've been building a lot of custom GPTs for my customers because I go out and do sales training. And one of the biggest problems is reps actually applying the training. So one of the things we teach is how to build an account hypothesis for like mid-market or enterprise selling. You need to come with a really compelling, strong point of view. Well, that can take a sales rep 20, 30 minutes to do that research. That could be spent selling. And also, in most cases, they won't look in the right places, so they won't build a really compelling hypothesis. So, I built a custom GPT where I trained it with hours and hours and hours of training transcripts, so it has the context. And then all the user has to do is put in the company's name, their website, and the prospect's name. And literally within 30 seconds, it tells you how they make money, who their competitors are, the value prop, any recent funding, what they need to spend that money on if they've raised money, 5 discovery questions, and an account hypothesis. And the rep can now take that, spend a few minutes processing it and pulling it all together, and hop on a call and run the conversation. So sometimes there's a time and a place for a custom GPT or some kind of, like you said, really low cost, very easy to create yourself. And then sometimes, like, hey, how do we actually bring in a vendor that's built technology that has AI and agents built into it, and we'll deploy that? And then how about sometimes we just have a human being
Mm,
sell or speak and have a conversation with another human being? So it's knowing, like you said there, where and when to deploy and what to
yeah.
deploy. And if it's going to be actually, I was about to say if it's not going to be a human being, but I think the human being needs the context as well. So, regardless of what you do, they have to have the context so that they can implement it and execute effectively. Otherwise, you'll get a negative outcome, right? And I think that's what a lot of people are doing. A lot of these
Mm,
AI agents, like you said there are some bad ones. They don't have what good looks like. They
mm,
just they're just like, hey, let's just send this message that's cookie cutter to a million people, and surprise,
mhm.
surprise, it doesn't resonate with anybody, right?
Yeah, I think the dilemma in why there's definitely bad perception of the agent is because there are companies essentially that started building the agents, but the orchestrations of those agents is pretty poor. So a lot of let's go to the first initial versions of agents, let's say last year in particular, were not that great, and that's because the people that were building those agents are not necessarily domain experts in their field as well. So sometimes I just look at some companies and I'm like, this founding team, they have no clue what they're talking about. How can they build a good agent? And then, of course, then you get kind of bad feedback about those agents. There are kind of few issues. So some people building agents and then they're not really domain experts in their field. I think that's important because you need to understand every single little bit and what it again, as I said, what it makes sense, whether the agent actually can do this little bit, or actually it will need to be passed on to the human to do it. So we've seen some bad agents. Now, also the tech has massively improved since the last year. So one of the reasons why maybe some things didn't work out last year is because the tech was still in its nascency. So now that we're moving to things like GPT-5 and other models, are popping up all the time. it just becomes much easier to build high quality agents. So you do see really, really solid agents popping up, and suddenly things are changing. Now the problem, there's definitely a lot of teething issues there that you had on let's call it domain expertise problems, orchestration problems, technology problems. I think but there's also a few areas where I would say you should not apply agents. You should not think about kind of agentic first approach. You should kind of really think as max human as possible. So what is that? Typically, I would say that is enterprise sales. Enterprise sales is so complex. You need to multi-thread so heavily. You need to attend events. You need to do a lot of things. And this is where I see, when you have like 6, 7 figure deals that you're working on, um, you can afford humans, first of all, right? So on these sort of deals, right? And
Yeah.
because the sales cycles are so long, and it has quite a bit of complexity. Sure, you can use agents, but the agents are much better fit for something that has sort of it's a bit of a conveyor belt, let's call it that way, right? So maybe lower deal sizes, there's a streamlined process, etc. But agents are maybe today maybe are not as great when it comes to dealing with a lot of complexity that comes to enterprise sales. So kind of stay away. I would say always stay away from this sort of thing. Now, the other thing I would mention is where agents are maybe not really good at is working with very tiny TAMs, so total addressable market. So when you don't have that many accounts, like why would you need to use a lot of automation agents anyway, right? So, so it kind of correlates. Enterprise sales, small TAMs, not really good fit typically. I see there. And some people ask me, so Frank, well, what's a big TAM? What's a small TAM? I would say, it's like 3,000 accounts or companies that you're trying to engage with. From there on, that's when I would say you can start using agents, or you should start thinking about agents. But anything like below 3K companies, I mean, you can do majority of things, manually.
So we've built the leading skill optimization platform with 400 plus sales lessons, 12 courses from prospecting all the way through to late stage deal negotiation and more, one-to-one sales coaching and AI sales assistance. And I want to give you 7 days free access to the platform. The reason I want to do this is because nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. And after training and coaching hundreds of sales reps and teams in the last 2 years, most haven't mastered critical selling skills, and it's preventing them from being promoted, earning great money, and building a great career in B2B sales. So go to the revenueenabler.com, grab a free trial, and join hundreds of salespeople that are closing their skill gaps and mastering sales. There's a link in the video description. I'm looking forward to getting you set up. Give me a shout with any questions.
So what else doesn't work? I'm just trying to think. Yeah, like commodity kind of stuff. So for example, SEO services or lead gen service or whatever. Essentially, yes, there's a huge TAM, but you're selling something like what everybody else is selling. You don't necessarily have anything that makes you stand out. There's nothing unique about you, like literally. And why would an agent do? So you have to think about things like product market fit, essentially product channel fit, right? So, and maybe the best way, I always ask this question, because we disqualify heavily people from using agents, because I don't want to be, I don't want to having people churn
Yeah.
from our agent. So the way that we disqualify is, so yeah, we ask how big is the TAM, deal sizes, um, and what else we ask? Is there something unique about them? Do they have product market fit? And then do they have product channel fit? And what I mean by this is like, have you sent a few emails yourself or LinkedIn message, whatever? Were you able to generate traction through outbound? And if the answer is yes, I'm just gonna do it, at a better scale, slightly better, whatever. But were you able to do that as a human? And if not, why do you think the agent will be able to do that? Right? So it's just having a very frank conversation with why, like, because I think they're just failing as businesses, and they think that the agent is the magic wand that will save them, and it doesn't work out, and like, nah, the agent doesn't work. But that's
Yeah.
because, that's because these folks should have been disqualified in the first place. So what we are seeing definitely this year, so all the big AI agent companies in sales, what they do is they disqualify you aggressively. So you're gonna sign up to a demo. They will send you a rejection email saying sorry, you're not a fit, and that's because they've seen huge churn from bad fit customers essentially. But in the early days, you just didn't know what is a bad fit or a good fit customer for the agents. So that's why also there was a lot of churn. There was also on the internet. There's a bunch of articles on TechCrunch, etc.
Yeah,
Because you were trying to figure out when do agents work, when they don't work, etc. We kind of have a similar approach to that, but there's a lot of things like it just doesn't make sense. Like enterprise says, why would you use agents there? On from a kind of outbound or kind of the developing pipeline there. So that's how I think about all these things. So yeah.
yeah, 1,000,000%. And we have to also remember, like anyone that's listening, when the internet was invented all those years ago, like it wasn't perfect then either, right? And AI is going through the same evolution, and in 20 years' time, I don't know. I think I've got an 18-month-old son, and I say this to
Mhm.
my partner all of the time. Like, what will life be like when he's learning to drive? Like, will he drive a car? Like,
No, I mean,
we don't know, right?
yeah, I think we already see autonomous cars in the Bay Area. Mr.
Yeah,
Musk has also launched his robo taxis as well. So we would expect that to come to the UK and other parts of the world. So the world will be very different. But I think what's happening next 5 years for sure, every human will be able to have their own mini agent that's has all the context about them, their life, their history, their parents, everybody. So just think of you have in your pocket your personal assistant at all times. That's where we really headed. That's what
yeah,
Mr. Sam Altman wants to, everybody. And then Sam Altman wants to use that context to show you some ads. That's also coming, by the way.
yeah.
So just be very aware. When you are giving up that context about your life, your business, etc. Ads and they will be coming your way.
Yeah.
And I mean, on one hand, yes, there will be some people that will not want to give up their data. On the other hand, there will be a lot of people that will want to have more personalized experience in everything they do, agentic and stuff like that. I'm that type of person. I'm happy to give up my data, my in the context about me and my business, so that I have a happier life, I guess. But I also know a lot of
People
people.
already have it, right?
Mm,
Google knows so much about us. Like, if you're using Google for Business, they can see your spreadsheets, they can see your pitch decks, your investor decks. They can
yeah,
see that the good and the bad things you type into Google. Like, these organizations already know like so much about us, right? Our patterns and things like that.
mm,
It's only going to go one way, I think. And it will also be, especially the big ones like OpenAI and stuff. They will be things put in place that they can't use the information in a bad way and things like that. I think it's only going to go one way, like you said. So it'd be interesting to just see how it evolves. You mentioned something, Frank, earlier, which I think is really exciting. Is you mentioned about enterprise. So I've been banging this drum for a little while now with the SMB side, and I
mhm,
don't even think it really needs much AI. It's more actually just like automated processes. I mean, there's a bit of AI with the FAQ component I'll mention, but
mhm,
take an SMB high velocity sales organization and you've got a lot of inbound.
yeah,
The reality is, and I was reading a McKinsey and Co article a few months ago, and it was like, I can't remember how many people. I think it was like 70% of buyers that were interviewed said that they'd be prepared to spend up to 50,000 US dollars on a purchase without speaking to a human being because they, in most cases, get very little value from salespeople.
yeah,
So my my point of view is if we're driving loads of inbound to the website, we capture a form submission. We then ask them several questions. What's your problem you're trying to solve? What are the use cases? We send them to a page where there's little mini demo videos or a guided, they click the buttons and they go through like a guided tour. And then there's an AI chatbot where they can ask about integrations or scalable pricing or whatever. And if they like
yeah,
it, they press a DocuSign button and they sign it. Like, why would we not create that? That's possible today. And
yeah.
then redeploy the money we're spending on the human beings to go and focus on mid-market enterprise deals,
That's a very
right?
good question. So I have a very good answer to that.
Okay.
And then I have a suggestion on how you could upgrade even that experience. So the dilemma when it comes to sort of software buying is that people don't just get your software; they're also trying to figure out what's the team behind the software. So you're not just getting Salesforce. You're also thinking who's built it. So you're gonna go and do some due diligence on the founder, and then you realize, oh, it's Frank's software. And then what's your confidence that this software has been built correctly? So there's definitely, whenever you are, renting the software, you're also renting the team that's behind the software, and there's a lot of decision making that goes around somebody's head. What's the team behind this? What's the support going to be like? So there's definitely that human component, and I see where you're coming from. But in a lot of cases, people are trying to de-risk, essentially, by making bad software purchase decision by speaking to somebody. So there's definitely, let's say in our case, I'll give you an example. You can buy most of our products without speaking to a human being on our website. We still do 500 plus demos a day, sorry, not a day, a month. So people really want to talk to you.
Yes.
They can't buy the product because they have questions, or they want to de-risk, or they just want to chat with somebody. And there's
Yeah.
always that thing. Now, the way that I think about what would actually work, so I totally understand where you're coming from. Why don't we just build this funnel and there's no need to speak to a sales rep? And I'm something like that. Actually, I'm that person. I'm totally fine to buy without speaking to anybody, because I'm thinking, why would I book on a demo? Maybe which will happen next week or whatever. Right? Why would I do that? I'm pretty savvy and I can just go and buy. But yeah, there'll be a lot of people that will want to speak to a human for whatever reason. But here's an example of what I'm imagining what's going to happen in the future. So you get to a stage where you're about to purchase software. It costs, let's say, 50K ACV, annual contract value, and you'll have two options. That's how I imagine. First option is get somebody on a demo, ask a few questions, blah blah blah, and go and purchase that. And then the second option, here's the AI agent option. You can speak to an agent, or there's a workflow, whatever, and get 20% off. Now, do you know why it's 20% off?
Yeah, it's a lot more efficient, right? You haven't got to pay for a human being to sit there
Well, sales
and
cost
right.
20% typically. That's why you typically think about why it's 20% off. But essentially, sales, paying commissions, everything is about sales costs about 20% of the revenue. Let's give 20%, let them buy, and off you go. But essentially, there'll be these two options. How I imagine why a lot more people would be also willing to speak to an agent, because the human path will seem more expensive and more painful to go through a human, and just buy it yourself and get a little discount. So I can imagine that, and I'll be definitely clicking on the agent option with 20% off instead of speaking to a human, even for 50K. So yeah,
Yeah, right. Like you said, people don't want to wait a week to just have a discovery call, then wait another week for a sales engineer to do a demo,
yes,
etc. Right? Like, again,
yes.
I'm like you. I'm not a developer, but I'm pretty techie. I've had to be in startups building sales teams. I've had to figure out how to connect HubSpot with this and do that kind of stuff. So I just want to put my card in. Let me just give you my credit card and just give me an account, and I'll figure it out and I'll raise my hand. And some
But
people want to do that.
yeah, I think the difference here is, so the savvy people like you and me, we would go down that route, but the unsavvy folks will go down the human path.
Yes.
See, that's how I think about this. And that's
Yeah.
why it's very important to have this optionality, and why we, even though we are PLG business, so we do product-led growth, essentially is the default of our business, we still at every step of the way, we give the ability for that user to call us up, to book a demo, chat, whatever it is, right? There's essentially a sales assist, and it goes into hundreds of meetings every month. That means there is demand for that. People want to speak to you, and that's fine. I don't think you definitely want to be a business that is sort of, let's call it PLG first. I think that's the ideal business, PLG first. But there's a sales that says you can speak to anybody at any time, any point. We will assist you. Yeah, and because that is possible today, and I think that is quite a typically strong business model. Because still majority of the people still buy our product without speaking to any human. So you want that to happen as much as possible. But yeah, any form of complexity, let's say sales, outreach, we tackle topics like deliverability, AI agents, AI, whatever. There's a lot that goes into that, and that's why people have questions. But if you're selling something simple, like
Yeah.
very simple, then eliminate humans. Like why they even questions? I've seen some websites, they make a lot of money. There's no way to reach out to support at all, actually. So, but they still make a lot of money. But they
Yeah, of
say
course.
something like super simple. And it'll be stupid to have support. Like, and I get where they're coming from. So yeah, it also depends on the businesses, I would say as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you're saying there's almost like three options long term is you PLG model. Some people, let me just put my credit card into the ATM and get access. The second is let me speak to a human being. And then the third is let me speak to an AI version of a human. At the moment, I've been plugging a cable into my brain, downloading it because I'm building, you've probably seen Delphi.
Yes.
Um, but I'm trying to build James GPT so that
Mm,
my customers can access me 24/7, 365. Because think about it, you're a buyer, you're the VP of HR, you've
yeah.
identified a problem, you want to buy some software, and it's Thursday evening at 7 p.m. You know you're gonna have to wait a couple of days to speak to a sales rep. Imagine I could speak to one right now. I'm sat on
Mm,
the sofa having a glass of wine, and there's an AI version of James on there that's helping me understand my problem, quantifying it, show me how they solve it, and then sending me a DocuSign. And I can ask them some like that. Why would we not want to go down that route? It's not
mm,
that we're replacing salespeople. Just get the hell out of your customer's way. And if a customer does want to spend some time with you, give them an option to book a demo for tomorrow morning when one of your sales reps is back in the office.
mm.
But
Yeah,
give
the other way
people
to
the
think
option.
about this is, naturally sales reps or just generally people are in the office only for about, well, let's say nine hours a day. Well, what happens with the rest of the hours? If when you're in global business, customers want to buy. Yeah, exactly. Customers want to buy. They need it now. Whatever. It can't wait till tomorrow. Right? It does. There's plenty of businesses that are like that. So this is where, an example of where you would blend humans with AI agents. So I guess again, example, let's say on our website that we're thinking of right now. So you have these humans that you can call up, right, and you can have a chat with them. But then they go home, they go to bed, right? And I still want to, I I would love to put this to continue 24/7. And I'm just trying to think to myself, damn, how could I make this happen? Well, when the humans go to bed, I'll activate the AI agents. As an example, that's kind of I'm thinking of how can I
Yeah.
make sure that I'm able to support my customers around the clock if it's a global business. And that's how I think how every business should think about it as well. How do you? Because some people buy on a Sunday or on Saturday, and yes, you're not around because you don't want to work, but the customer doesn't care. The customer
Yeah.
wants answers now and immediately, and they don't want to go to a help desk or whatever. They don't want to browse around or chat GPT. Just want to, and so. And that's the expectations, and I think these expectations have been driven by the big companies like Amazon, etc., where they've set the standards like very high. So the users, so a lot of these standards are coming from the world of B2C, where suddenly you can get everything so fast and so cheap, whatever, and so user expectations are massively increasing. And if you're in a highly competitive market like I am, I have like hundreds of competitors. If speed to lead is like super important. So if you're unable to be there for your user on the website or whatever happens, something's broken, etc., they're just gonna leave. They're gonna go to Google, ChatGPT, find an alternative, and then go to them. So that's why it's super important that you are able to service effectively your customers. So we do other things that have to do, for example, also nothing with the AI agents at all. To kind of kind of tackle that speed to lead. So one of the things that works really well and very magically is actually sending a WhatsApp message to every person that signs up. So one of the things we do ask is the mobile number of the recipient, and if we can see that actually, wow, there's a WhatsApp associated, you get a quick message saying like, hey, this is Frank from the Forge. Let me know if you got any questions whatsoever. So this is an example where there's no AI involved at all. And
Yeah.
if we get a reply, it goes into Slack, and then actually any person could reply. But actually, I reply them right now. But essentially, the reason why you're also doing these sort of things is, let's say, like WhatsApp. In our kind of space, I think it makes sense. Maybe in other space, it wouldn't make sense. But a lot of folks do have WhatsApp, and whenever you like, you also have to think that it's not a channel that's also super saturated, right? So that's one reason why we're doing. But the other reason why we're doing it, so maybe on the saturation front. So let's say if you're gonna send like an onboarding email, like a sales email inbound, versus a WhatsApp message, the WhatsApp message gets like a 10x relative lift in the reply rate. Just to give you an idea why WhatsApp is actually so crucial, like generally on inbound, if it makes sense for your ICP. But also people are willing to also give up more information about themselves. You will see that there's a lot less friction on the WhatsApp channel than email. So kind of think of these kind of components, or also channels where maybe the agent stuff also kind of doesn't make sense. So like WhatsApp, I would say it still has to be kind of controlled by human. And the only thing that you can do to I guess increase efficiencies is just to automate that, and that's it. But don't use agent. I wouldn't use agents, for example, on WhatsApp. That's still sort of a human to human sort of interaction. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just want that to know there.
I agree with you. And something I teach as well is you mentioned speed to lead.
Mm,
I talk about speed to differentiation. So there's
mm,
two components here, and I can't remember if it's Gartner or somebody else, but years ago they came out with this data that found if you don't contact a cut an inbound lead within 5 minutes, your chances of winning the deal, like, it drops significantly. And I won't
Mm.
name the data provider when I was a VP of sales, but I went inbound with them, and I was on the thank you page of inbounding, and they called me. And I said, "Holy smokes, dude, that was fast." And they were like, "We are KPI'd. If we don't phone a lead we're assigned within 5 minutes, we come off of the inbound lead router for 30 days because of this data." And it got me thinking, like, well, one, I want my team to be picking up the phone instantly to people that are potentially now gone to a competitor's website.
Yeah.
And I want to get them on the phone to differentiate ASAP. The quicker I can get differentiation into the customer's decision criteria with evidence that it makes sense to include it, the quicker I'm starting to rig the game and make life really hard for my competitors. So your AI, phoning workflow is spot on, because imagine if I could have AI phone an inbound lead when they've left our website and gone to a competitor and start to plant the seed around, you need this capability because of this business outcome it creates.
Mm.
Nobody else can do it. Makes life very hard for an account executive that doesn't have that capability and the prospect's now asking them for it.
Yeah.
Right. So speed to lead is important. Speed to differentiation is even more important, because the quicker you differentiate, the quicker you rig the game and you start winning a shitload more deals.
Yeah, exactly. That's where when I mentioned to you, it's not just about buying the software; it's about the experience that you have with the team that tilts the decision towards you. And of course, the faster you are, folks just don't have even the time to look at the competitors because they really love the experience with you, and that love the experience with you. That's the kind of human component. That's why we don't believe in kind of what others are saying, replacing humans or whatever. It's just that I think that there's a naturally profitability is the name of the game, right? So it's not profit at all cost anymore. But to be profitable with inflation and everything that's happening in the world, it's tough. You need to be lean and mean. And I think the other dilemma that everybody's seeing, specifically in the software space, let's say because it's very very easy to build software, suddenly you have all these competitors popping up in different categories on the data intelligence front or whatever, like a lot of categories, right? Because people are building softwares in Lovable or whatever the other vibe coding tools are, and suddenly you have all these competitors popping up. I'll give you an example. Let's say MySpace. I think I had 50 fewer competitors a year ago than today. 50 more competitors I have today that
That's
did not
crazy.
exist a year ago because it's so easy to build.
Yeah.
And software companies or other companies used to increase prices, quite a bit, gradually every year. And suddenly you have this pricing pressure because you have all these competitors. It's hard to increase your prices. So that's like one kind of dilemma that a lot of companies have. Increasing prices gets just a lot more difficult as a topic because suddenly you're gonna churn out a lot of customers, is the assumption, because there's so many more competitors popping up. So that's an example why speed to lead is so important. Like all these topics, like having a solid process, having a lot of processes sort of that are either fully automated, agentified, whatever that is, because you will lose to competition. So it's just inevitable. And I always am thinking, I think every founder that I'm meeting right now, CEO, I'm just asking, so you're using any agents? And I'm always surprised when they say no. It's like, yeah, I'm kind of thinking, what's wrong with you? Like, don't you want to
Yeah.
have better margins, more revenue, more like fewer people? Like, don't you want to have that? And then I would, have some examples from other companies that have, very tiny teams, and like, why would you want to deal with so many people? And then I'm just still surprised with a lot of founders out there that don't start implementing it. It's kind of you could say it's a kind of late now. A lot of, you want to be one of the first ones in your competitor kind of segment doing this and seeing better efficiencies. Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I mean, it's partly how my business differentiates is we don't just sell training and coaching. We've got 25, 30 AI, I call them AI sales assistants, that I can help your sales reps implement the training. But also there's other ones that I think would be cool for the listeners to really think about. And I think your problem that you're talking about there with the founders is lack of curiosity. But
Mm,
I got really curious about, not only can I help a salesperson with AI, what about a manager? So you've got a sales manager who manages 10 account executives, is stretched, can maybe listen to one, maybe two sales calls for coaching per
mm,
month. I
yeah.
built a custom GPT that I put all the context in the scorecard, etc. It goes into the call recording tool. They download the transcript, and within 60 seconds, it scores the call, gives them the context on that score, and builds them a coaching plan. So
Mm,
like again, that part of my way of differentiating is by being, on the front foot, like nowhere near as far as some people are with agents and things like that, but starting to be known for not just training and coaching, but also like AI and how AI can help close some of the gap around capacity and capability. And it
mm,
doesn't just have to be about prospecting or like lead generation. What about like business case creation or stakeholder mapping or
yeah.
coaching or deal strategies or whatever? Like, I just think I wanted to say that because you mentioned something earlier there about the founders and none of them are using agents. Just lack of curiosity. We've always done business this way, so we'll continue doing it. And you're going to get left behind. You have to adapt, right? And get curious. And I guess you see
Yeah.
that all the time.
I mean, a lot of founders will say, "I don't have any time for this," and I'm like, "That's a fantastic excuse." uh, so if you don't have any time for this, bring somebody, with let's call it the big brains, and they will implement that for you. Yeah, I think there's a lot of excuses kind of flying around. See, people are still, on the fence with AI. Like a lot of people don't like the AI stuff or whatever. They don't know what to do with it. And even though there's a lot of founders that build a lot of software companies, is you also sometimes find that actually they're not that savvy on these other topics like AI or whatever. They build a software company, but like AI and all that, that's like another territory, and they feel like it's a bit like whatever crypto or whatever is going to pass. I don't know. I'm not saying that's passing. If you think about kind of other things that we're seeing, like over say 50-60% of VC money is going into AI these days, right? So there's a you can call it you can think of it as a bubble, but then there's actual hard evidence that implementation of systems, agentic systems as well, leads to lower headcount, higher margins, more revenue. The evidence is there that it actually works. So I'm always like, what's stopping you? Like, there's all these case studies and evidence that's on the internet. Why wouldn't you want to implement this? And see, that's because people are also, they just like the way things are going, and they just don't feel like any you don't need to change anything, right? Everything's working, it's fine. And until your competitors start doing this, so, and I
Yes.
think then people start moving. But why would you want to be the first one to implement it in your space? I'm not sure. um and if, as I said, if you're struggling to come up with what would you do first, just go to ChatGPT, start talking, using it as a bit of a business coach, and then I bet you'll come up with a few ideas where you can start and kind of from progress from there on. But yeah, you need somebody that has this sort of energy coming into the business and says, I would love to massively increase the efficiency in this business. So somebody has to, yes, spearhead this sort of transformation. Luckily in our business, that's me actually.
Okay.
But in other businesses, you don't have a crazy CEO going around and saying, let's get rid of this. So get rid of this meaning this repetitive process typically. But the easiest way that I found internally to sort of democratize this process a bit and kind of aggregate ideas, we just literally have created a Slack channel called N8N Ideas. You just go in there, you tag the agent and say, I have this really cool idea where I would love to eliminate this repetitive thing that I'm doing on a daily basis. And it's this process. And it just goes into a sheet. And then the guy with the big brains goes, looks at the sheet, prioritizes based on the revenue impact, and goes and implements it. That's
Yeah.
maybe the process of how you could do this as well, or once you've spoken to ChatGPT. But that's an example of where it doesn't have to be that complex. You just need the person that probably does the implementation within the business, because yeah, it's not that straightforward. So somebody needs to have those big brains, I guess.
Million percent. I don't know what we'll call the role, but there is definitely going to be like the VP of effectiveness or the VP of AI. And just like how we had SDRs and AEs, there is going to be that person in majority of they're going to be forced to, because like you said, you're either going to be on the front foot, innovating, building authority with AI, and you're going to be first to market in your category, and start to be seen as the future, and people want to invest in your organization. Not, I mean, from an investor perspective, customers, they want to buy from you because it's new and you're innovating. They're not going to get left behind.
Mm.
Or you're going to be forced to because your competitors are, and it's going to show up in the close loss reasons when you move that deal into closed loss that they decided to go with someone else because of XYZ reason. So I don't know what we'll call it, but there will
It's
be like
typically
this.
called ghosted. Ghosted means that the competitor
Yeah,
just passed the bet or whatever.
yeah,
So you have to kind of dig the underlying reasons of ghosted. The
yeah,
competition is just that good when it comes to processing their leads and everything, right? So you
yeah,
have to think and I think just a little advice for anybody, I guess it doesn't matter in sales or as a founder, just go through a buying process with your competitors and just have a look how sophisticated the funnels are. And then maybe you will see some of those agentic experiences in there. Yeah, just little thing that you can do just to understand the experience and how fast things happen and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's something that I would do, and I highly encourage everybody else to do. And you'll see that your competition is just so much better than you are.
Yeah.
And it has an impact. And close last reason, ghosted. Some of those things where you get ghosted is because competition was better than you.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just to before we wrap here, because I think this has been a really cool session. I think we could probably spend a good couple of days, which we both don't have, talking about this. But um, you mentioned there around like founders and not using any agents. Like one thing I'd massively recommend is get your team into the office, or if you're a virtual team, use like a Miro board and just get everybody to write down the stuff that drives them mental. Like
Yes.
every day, what drives you insane? What slows you down? If I could get it out of your way, what would it be? And then just take a step back and go, cool, how can I get AI to do that? And should I replace that with AI? Or do I actually just need to upskill people because it shouldn't actually be that hard? This is a human activity. But if that isn't the case, how can I build agents? Or sometimes it's just I need to build a really good prompt that someone can just plug in because it doesn't need a full blown agent. But just think about the bottlenecks in your team. Ask your team to get involved. That's good for culture and things like that. And then just be like, cool, what slows us down? Here's our objectives. How do we get there faster? Like, would you say that's a good exercise for a founder listening to this or a sales leader listening to this that wants to, move the needle and become a bit more efficient and effective?
Totally agree with you. That's a very good
Yeah.
exercise. So you either have this sort of moment in your business where you just go whatever offsite for a day or so,
Yeah.
discuss this because it is very transformational, and then implement a process where you can work on these sort of items async, right? So it has to be definitely an evergreen process. It's not something that you do once. It's just something that you need to embed. You can call these AI systems, whatever, automation workload, whatever you want to call that. But it's definitely somebody needs to own this in the company. And it's not just for sales, to be honest. It's across a whole company. So when we run these automation processes, we also collect invoices, for example,
Yeah.
from different sort of vendors, and we automate that, push it into our accounting software, whatever. Like there's a lot of these sort of different things that you could do to improve the efficiency. And yeah, whatever is nightmare, like you said, whatever is nightmare that you have in your business, just try and solve that with AI.
Yeah, amazing. My ring just went off, and I don't have an AI agent to answer the front door yet. So that's probably perfect timing. But Frank, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your advice. I think everyone listening probably clearly understands you're a true expert in this stuff. So I'd love to get you back on at some point when you've got another short break to go into this in a bit more detail. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and experience with us today.
Thank you, James. Cheers.
Awesome, lovely. This episode is sponsored by I'm just playing, but I do have two things for you today. So we recently released a mini prospecting course, 100% free to access, where I break down the script that my last team used to go from 6 meetings a month to 60 meetings per month. There's a lesson on how to write great first outbound emails. And then there's another lesson on video and voice note prospecting and best practices. And there's so much more in the course as well. If you want to get free access, just click the link in the description below. Now, alternatively, I said there's a second thing. Maybe you don't need prospecting support, but maybe you need help running better demos or scoring your deals with MedPick, or you need help with prospects that are ghosting you. If this is the case and you want to unlock some of these trainings and resources, go ahead and join the prospecting course anyway, because you'll find there's other resources and more content in the mini content vault folder. So go sign up today and unlock these resources.